Welcome to the Senior Focus. I'm your host, Nick Caltis. I'm here with Senator Harriette Chandler, Senator Michael Moore.
How you doing, Nick?
Fine. How are both of you today?
Fine, thank you.
Very good.
You know, I think I would like to start with Senator Chandler. And for those out there that might not know who you are, and I would say that most people probably do know who Senator Chandler is, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'd be happy to. It's hard for me to talk about myself, but that's okay.
It is a very difficult thing to do, isn't it?
I'm good at answering questions about
Right.
it, but it's hard to begin and to know what to
Well,
say.
then let me ask you some
Okay,
questions.
okay.
When did you start in public service?
I started in public service after a long career in the private sector, and I did that in 1994. And I started in public service, interestingly enough, because my mother had just passed away, and I began to think how short life is and how it was time for me to give back.
Right.
Life had been good to me, the city of Worcester had been good to me, and I wanted to give back, and I started by running for the school committee in Worcester. And it was the first time I'd ever run for anything in electoral politics, and I ran and I won.
What was that like?
Well,
I mean, I've never run for public office, or I've never run for anything myself.
it was exciting, except I had several people running against me because, you know, school committees is not a one-on-one race as a rule. And so I had to learn how to organize
Sure.
a committee, and I learned how to do all the things that people learn to do in politics. Women tend to be a little timid about it because you think that, well, I'm not ready. I need to do this, or I need to do that. I need to have another degree, or I need to develop a base here or a base there. You have to just run, and that's, am I right?
Yeah, just got to go for it.
You just have to go for it, and there's never a perfect time. You just have to do it at the time that is best for you. And I ran because we were in a situation very much like we are today, in that people were saying the Worcester schools weren't good. They were, in fact, saying they were so poor that people were not coming to Worcester. They were not buying homes in Worcester. And that's kind of the feeling you hear around today. And I thought, gee, I have a great education. Maybe, since I want to give back to this community, maybe that's the best way I can give back.
You do have a great education.
I
Why
do.
don't you tell us a little bit about your education?
Well, I have a bachelor's degree from Wellesley College in political science, and then I went to Clark to get a master's degree because I was teaching at North High School, and the only way I could continue teaching at the high school was to be able to have a master's degree. So I really hadn't planned it, and I liked school. I love school, I should say. And so I got a master's degree from Clark in international relations and government and history, and then they suggested that maybe I'd like to continue. I had, by this time, one child, and then I had a second child, and then I had a third child. And I was able to go to school part-time to get my doctorate. I wouldn't have been able to do that if Clark hadn't been generous and given me a full fellowship. And then I was also able to get a full fellowship from the Radcliffe Institute. So between them all, I was able to go to college, go get a graduate degree and get a PhD. After that, I worked for a number of years. I taught at WPI and taught at Clark and taught at Tufts University. And I went on at that point. I decided I really wanted to be part of the real world. Academia is not the real world.
Okay.
And I decided to go back to school and get an MBA, because women, that's what we do. We go back to school to get another degree so that we're ready to do whatever it is that most men would do without even thinking about it. And that is, unfortunately, the way it works sometimes. And so I got an MBA and I started working in high tech. So I've had a lot of experience in the public sector. It's been an interesting experience. I've done marketing, strategic planning, selling, and then I had the opportunity, because my mother was ill, to stay home and start reading the papers and start really focusing on Worcester. By this time, my 3 children were much older, and it took me 7 years to get a PhD, so you can imagine how long it would take. It took me, I went to Simmons Graduate School of Management, so I did my MBA in 1 year, which made it possible for me to do. And I ran for office, and the rest is kind of history. I never expected it to happen, but
So
it did.
education is an important thing.
Oh, it's so important to me. It opens doors.
Mike, you're also interested in education as a priority for you as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah. For the last 4 years, I've been chairing the Committee on Higher Education. So it's actually, I think it's vitally important if we're looking at providing access to our students or skills to our workforce. This is how we have to do. We have to do through post-secondary education. You can't be successful today on a high school diploma.
Right.
So I think it's incumbent upon us to give our workforce and our kids the opportunities.
And the geographic area that we find ourselves in, there are a lot of institutions of higher education here.
Absolutely.
We're kind of fortunate in that regard.
We really are. You know, I've often thought that if Worcester were like so many of the other post-industrial communities that we have in Massachusetts, the Lynns, the Holyoaks, the Lawrences, without those universities, without those schools of higher education, it would have changed the quality of life, I think, tremendously in Worcester.
I really would.
They make a difference.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
make
they
a
definitely
huge
do.
difference. Now we have to learn how to sort of take advantage of all these students that we have and blend them in and get a synergy going to keep these students here if we possibly can.
Well, I think
and work with them.
that's the part we do, is keep them here. I think unknowingly that we've already been taking advantage of the students being here, accessing a lot of our retail outlets, businesses here. Now it's just putting more of an emphasis on trying to provide job opportunities for them to stay.
Yeah.
And I think we've done that with some of the life sciences, the research buildings we have, the L.P. Sherman Research Building, providing more of that STEM-related work that I think is going to carry the economy into the future. So I think that's really what we've got to focus on, as Senator Chandler is stating.
Yeah, I think that, as you say, the importance of education is also important because of the workforce. So there would seem to be a tremendous pool of individuals right here in central Massachusetts, right here in Worcester, to be able to fill out that workforce.
I think you're right, and you know, the workforce is changing. I don't know whether you found it so, you must have. We have changed into a knowledge-based economy. And so whatever skills a student needs in high school and college to be part of that workforce, we can provide them through our public educational facilities and our private educational facilities. But it is a knowledge-based economy, less dependent on brawn, more dependent on what you know.
Yeah.
Even as far as when we talk about advanced manufacturing, we're trying to dispel the belief that we're losing all our manufacturing overseas. A lot of it's coming back here. And the reason is because we've got a higher quality of work product here. Our productivity is higher quality of work product. But when you talk manufacturing, I think a lot of people think back to the years where it's a sweatshop, it's a grease shop, you come out of there. The advanced manufacturing, it's all high technology machinery being operated. So the workforce that's going in there needs a skill level that's much greater.
CAD/CAM, computer-aided
Oh, yeah.
design,
Yeah.
computer-aided manufacturing.
And these are great employment opportunities. You can make $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. And you might not need a 4-year degree. You might just need a 2-year license or a certificate, and you can go right into the workforce. And they're great opportunities. But it's the advanced skills that you have to have.
Right.
And I think our public schools, I'm not sure about the private, but our public schools in Worcester are trying to align their course offerings with the needs of the workplace.
Right.
That's really important, so that they are training people to get jobs that will exist when these people finish whatever it is, whether it's a certificate program or whether it's an associate's program or a full baccalaureate program. They're going to be ready to find jobs, and those jobs do exist, and that's important.
As far as re-election, you're involved in re-election,
I
aren't you?
am. He's lucky he doesn't have to deal with that.
You don't have
this
to
year.
deal with that this
Well, I'm up
It's
for
coming, but
I'm
not
up for
yet.
re-election, but not in the
Not yet.
intense situation that.
that I'm in.
What are some of the priorities that you want to tell us about?
Oh, I believe so completely that my first priority, and it's been that way for a number of years now, is economic development. It's
Okay.
jobs, jobs, jobs. It's what we're talking about right now. It goes back to education, where our educational force has to be prepared to train this workforce. We have to have jobs for them when they get out. We have to understand that all the other surrounding things have to be able to support it. I mean, for example, libraries have to be able to have the facilities for computers, so that the people who don't have their own computers at home can do their resumes, who can do their research on, in a public space, and that becomes very important. So, jobs, 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 and economic development, and wherever the state can help, we've worked hard to be able to do that.
Well, here's a tricky question. Jobs, 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 we all agree, jobs, very important. What do you think? What's your opinion about the minimum wage?
Oh, I feel very strongly about that, too. We passed the minimum wage. I think most of us believe in it tremendously. I shouldn't speak for you, Senator, but I think you do.
Yeah.
The minimum wage is critical. It raises all boats when you have that kind of a thing. An $8 minimum wage, which is what it is right now, and it will go up to $9 next year, and then $10, and by 2017 it'll be $11. Even at $11 an hour, it really is going to be hard for a working family to be able to support two children.
Did I see in California they wanted $15 an hour? I mean, I've got to think that's going to have a big chilling effect on employment. I mean, I'm not suggesting that they're not worth $15 an hour. I'm not suggesting that it's a good idea or it's not a good idea. But just being a business owner myself, I think that when you raise the minimum wage, economically, it's going to have an impact.
But don't forget also, too, it's the person making that now has more income that they could spend.
Right, that's true.
Put back into the economy.
And I think most people are not making the minimum wage. That's one of the things that...
Yeah, I think most people are not.
They are not.
Well, the other issue we have, too, is right now we have people who are making the minimum wage, or maybe just a little above it. The minimum wage is $16,400, something. So you're making $17,000, $18,000. You're still qualifying for public assistance. We have voters or constituency groups that are always coming at us that, look, we got to get people off public assistance. Well, and I agree, we need to try. Right. But when you have people that are working 40 hours a week or longer, and then they're still qualifying for every public assistance, there's an issue there.
Yeah, that's sad is what it is.
It is sad.
But even at $11 an hour, I think it's about $22,000 it'll be.
Yep.
That's hard to make ends meet at $22,000 when you have a family. It becomes a real
even
problem.
if you don't have a family, it's not a lot of money, no matter which way you look at it.
It really isn't.
Yeah.
Go to the grocery store today and see what things sell for. I mean, it's hard to feed a family.
Particularly if you watch your diet and you want to eat well, it's very expensive.
That's
if
true.
you don't really care and you just want to fill up your carriage with
fast food.
Maybe you can get by. Still very expensive, but if you want to watch what you're eating,
that's
it's very expensive.
a very wise thing to say. Because
thank you.
No, it is. You must be watching.
Well, and you think of the other.
I am watching.
And you think of the other costs that add to it, because you're only as good as the food you're eating. So if you're putting more food in, that's going to cause high blood pressure, cholesterol, obesity. Now you're adding other costs to your lifestyle and to the just the everyday life and healthcare costs.
And that's something that we will end up paying for. The taxpayer will have to pay for some of that.
We already are. When you take a look at certain things that, as far as the government spending on health care, it's really a rather frightening scenario that we look at. But we're going to have to head to a break right now. When we come back, we'll talk about certain health ailments that confront us and the government's expenditures in research and in treatment.
Join us on Tuesday, September 16th for a free symposium, Living Well to 100. Open to the public, free admission, free buffet lunch, free raffle prizes, and free community resources. Call us to register at 508-459-5057 or visit us at www.theseniorfocus.com.